But actually, I forgot to tell you, we were talking about like our first week, what people had to say. Well, the WNBA fined me for
No! You got fined for episode 1?
Dude, they fined me $1,500. I'm like, what? I'm like, this is just the beginning. I was like, you're kidding.
The WNBA is facing an unprecedented crisis, not on the court, but in its own front office. They've repeatedly tried to silence one of their most authentic voices, a player who dared to speak the truth, and in doing so, they've accidentally created their biggest star. This is the shocking story of how Sophie Cunningham's unwavering honesty has turned her into a media powerhouse, all while the league tries desperately to penalize her into submission.
They fined her again. Sophie Cunningham has now been fined 4 times this season. She's had 4 separate fines this season. And she got fined for comments on a podcast episode about referees. And it wasn't even like it was that bad.
Imagine starting a new venture only to be immediately hit with a staggering financial penalty just for speaking your mind. That's precisely what happened to Sophie Cunningham. Within days of launching her podcast, Show Me Something, under the massive The Volume media empire, she received an email that surely made her blood boil. A $1,500 fine. Not a slap on the wrist, not a polite warning, but a significant hit to her income. All because she dared to acknowledge a widely known, uncomfortable truth about the state of WNBA officiating.
Man, leave Sophie Cunningham alone, Kathy Engelbert. Don't nobody care about that corrupted WNBA and those corrupted referees. Y'all want to fine her $500. Why? Because y'all feeling some type of way because you, as the commissioner, not doing your job for that bum league. You hear me? At the end of the day, y'all have so many injuries. It's crazy. Y'all have over 150 injuries this year recorded. That's insane. Something not right.
The crime that led to this hefty fine? Sophie Cunningham had the audacity to be transparent about officiating inconsistencies. She wasn't cursing out officials or launching personal attacks. In fact, she began by giving them credit, stating, "If I was a ref, I know I would mess up all the time." Like, I'm not saying that your job is easy, but when it is a simple call right in front of your face multiple times, what are you doing? She even admitted she wouldn't be good at the job herself. Her only true sin was pointing out the glaringly obvious. They're just so inconsistent. This seemingly benign, universally agreed upon observation was deemed worthy of a $1,500 penalty. Sparking outrage among fans and players alike, it's an absurd overreaction, especially when literally every fan, player, coach, and analyst has echoed the exact same sentiment all season long.
If they didn't like you then, they sure aren't going to like you now. Sophie Cunningham has been making waves with the new podcast that she is now featured in, courtesy of The Volume. Sophie Cunningham letting it all out and not holding back one.
But this wasn't Sophie's first rodeo with the WNBA's fine machine. This was, in fact, the latest in a series of punitive measures designed, it seems, to quell her outspoken nature. Earlier in the season, she was hit with a $500 fine for a TikTok video. This wasn't some egregious breach of conduct. It was a simple lip sync to Sabrina Carpenter's Man-Child that went viral, garnering over 1.3 million views. Sophie's reaction to that fine perfectly encapsulated the absurdity of the situation. IDK, why this is funny to me. Like, okay, you got it, bud. Because there's not more important things to be worried about with our league right now? Her words were a subtle but potent jab at the league's misplaced priorities, and it turns out she was absolutely right.
And she pulls me aside and she goes, "Come here, Soph, I have to talk to you." And this was in like front of everybody. And I was like, "What did I do now?" And she just smiled and she goes, "Hey, they're going to fine you again." They're like, I was like, I even told them, I even credited them that their job was hard. I did say that. And I said that I would not be good at it.
The most controversial penalty, however, came with a $900 price tag and exposed a deeper, unsettling truth about the league's priorities. This fine wasn't for her words, but for her actions. Specifically, for defending her teammate Caitlin Clark during that infamous Connecticut Sun Brawl. When Dejonai Carrington poked Clark in the eye and Marina Mabrey shoved her to the ground, Sophie stepped in. She delivered a hard foul that sent a clear, unmistakable message. Mess with our star, and you'll deal with the consequences. For this act of loyalty and courage, for standing up against what many saw as targeted harassment, Sophie was penalized nearly $1,000. It begs the question, does the WNBA punish players for defending their own, especially when that defense involves protecting the league's biggest draw?
In the world of what they dealing with. So you telling me if I'm getting bullied, I can't make a video about it? You gonna punish me because I'm letting everybody know and the whole world know what's going on with me and that I'm crying out for help? So you gonna make me the bad guy?
Let's do the math because the numbers are absolutely staggering, especially when you consider the financial realities of the WNBA. Sophie Cunningham has been fined at least $2,900 this season across these documented incidents. $500 for the TikTok, $900 for defending Caitlin Clark, and $500 for her podcast comments. To put this in perspective, WNBA rookie scale salaries start around $60,000. For someone making that kind of money, these fines represent a significant chunk of their income. To make it even clearer, a $1,500 fine for Sophie is the equivalent of hitting an NBA player with a $200,000 penalty. In the entire history of the NBA, there have only been a handful of fines that steep, and none have been for anything remotely similar to what Sophie did. It's utterly absurd.
Is it uncommon for coaches or players to get fined in a professional league when talking about officiating? No, that's not uncommon. However, when your league is looking worse than the NFL on officiating, you know what you might ought to do? Sit down in the corner and shut the bleep up. And maybe you ought not be fining your players over it because your officiating is dog shit.
But here's the beautiful, undeniable irony that Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and her front office goons completely missed. Every single fine has made Sophie Cunningham more powerful. After the Connecticut Sun incident, her social media following exploded from around 350,000 to over 1.6 million overnight. The $500 TikTok fine generated millions of views and engagement. After 6 years of relative anonymity, Sophie Cunningham has suddenly become a superstar this season. Why? How did she accomplish the previously unachievable? How did she become a star in a league that often seems allergic to star power? The answer lies in her daring authenticity.
It wasn't that long ago that Sophie Cunningham made this little TikTok video. And in said TikTok video, and you can see right here, this was July 23rd, she put this up and said she got fined $500 by the WNBA for criticizing the refs.
To her credit, Sophie Cunningham used her brain. She noticed that the path to stardom had already been cleared for her, not by conforming, but by embracing outspokenness. She emulated the strategy that was utilized so effectively by players like Draymond Green in the NBA. Sophie herself pointed out the absurdity of this during her podcast, stating, 95% of the population who watches the WNBA agrees with me. She's absolutely right. Every metric, every fan poll, every social media discussion confirms that WNBA officiating is a disaster. Fans are desperate for honesty, and Sophie is delivering it, regardless of the consequences.
After 6 years of anonymity, Sophie Cunningham has suddenly become a superstar this season. Why? How did she accomplish the previously unachievable? How did she become a star in a league that seems to be allergic to star power? To her credit, Sophie Cunningham used her brain. She noticed that the path to stardom had already been cleared for her. She emulated the strategy that was utilized by Draymond Green.
The league's attempt to silence Sophie becomes even more perplexing when you consider the widespread acknowledgement of their officiating problems. Players across the league have been saying it for months. Angel Reese famously declared, "The officiating has to be fixed, and I don't give a DMN if I get fined." Chicago Sky's Elizabeth Williams called the league's handling of various situations really immature. Even head coaches like Stephanie White, Becky Hammond, and Natasha Howard have criticized officiating and faced fines. Most telling of all, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert herself was forced to admit there were problems, stating, "We hear the concerns. We take that input. Consistency is important. There's an independent evaluation of our officials. There are ramifications. So it's something we need to continue to work on." If the commissioner herself admits consistency is a problem and they're working to fix it, how exactly is Sophie Cunningham wrong for pointing out the exact same issues?
There he is. But, I mean, here's the thing. Are the WNBA referees just kind of bad, especially this season? Yeah, they are. And I think they're just bad all around. You know, it's not even just like one player or one team or anything else like that. Like, they're just overall, like, really bad. But here's the thing, right? Here's what I think, and this is not just pertaining to the WNBA, but just any sports league that has some sort of referee or just some sort of refereeing official. I think after every game, there should be a post-game conference for the referees, just like how there are for the players. And like I said, not even just in the WNBA, but in all sports leagues, because some of the calls that are made, I genuinely look and I'm wondering if I'm watching the same game as the ref.
The targeting of Sophie goes beyond just fines. It's about silencing the most authentic voice in women's basketball, especially when it comes to the league's biggest and most sensitive topic, Caitlin Clark. When Sophie defended Clark during that Connecticut Sun melee, it wasn't just about protecting a teammate. It was about standing up against a culture that allows jealousy and resentment to manifest as physical targeting. Sophie has been the only player brave enough to openly call out what everyone sees. Caitlin Clark is being systematically targeted by players who resent her success, and the officials are letting it happen. Her description of her former team's mentality perfectly captures this toxic environment. I know the talks Phoenix had in their locker room of like, we're going to show her what the W really is. I get it to a certain extent. Every rookie coming into the league, that's how you're going to treat them. But there's just more for her. It's her second year now. Being on her team and seeing it, I'm like, what are people doing? It's just too much.
You have seen players in our league try to like toughen up Caitlin. I know the talks that Phoenix had in the locker room of like, no, we're going to prove her, we're going to show her what the W really is. I'm like, what are people doing? It's just too much.
Finally, someone who gets it. Finally, someone in the WNBA who understands this thing called business.
What makes Sophie's situation even more infuriating is how the league treats her compared to the players actually causing problems. She gets fined $1,500 for acknowledging officiating inconsistencies on her podcast. Meanwhile, players who intentionally target and injure opponents get slaps on the wrist. Marina Mabre, who blindsided Caitlin Clark with a cheap shot that could have caused serious injury, initially received just a technical foul that was only upgraded to a flagrant after massive public outcry. The message from Kathy Engelbert's WNBA is crystal clear. Speak truth about our failures and we'll bankrupt you. Actually harm players on the court? We'll barely notice.
She calls out the people out there who refuse to say Caitlin Clark is the face of the league. People who would rather say this person and that person. What about her? What about her? No, there is only one face of the WNBA. There's only one person that has casuals sitting down in front of a TV, glued to their sofa, watching the WNBA. Sophie Cunningham also.
This bizarre double standard has created a chilling effect within the league. Sophie revealed on her podcast, everyone in my locker room, they're like, oh God, like what is she going to say next? Even her own teammates are walking on eggshells, terrified that association with her honesty might get them fined too. Their reaction tells you everything you need to know about how ridiculous this has become. The fact that professional athletes are terrified to speak honestly about their workplace conditions tells you everything about the toxic culture at the top of this league.
Now, the thing about this is, now that Sophie is bringing it up, now ESPN is falling by the wayside of her and actually agreeing that there's some extra sauce going on when it comes to Caitlin Clark getting fouled, getting bullied a little bit, poked in the eye, all that stuff, man. So let's get to that. Why would you want to hurt what everybody is watching? That doesn't make sense. All right.
Sophie Cunningham doesn't care about their intimidation tactics. She's proven that authenticity wins over political correctness every single time. When she called out Caitlin Clark critics as dumb, she wasn't being crude, she was stating mathematical facts. Every attendance figure, television rating, merchandise sale, and social media metric proves that Clark is the undisputed face of the WNBA. Anyone arguing otherwise is either delusional or dishonest. Sophie's description of Clark's fame level puts it in perfect perspective. It is a cult following. I'm not kidding. Like, think of the most famous person that you know or met. Times it by 10, 20, it's insane. She talked about seeing Travis Kelce and other A-list celebrities flying to Iowa City just to watch Clark play college basketball. This is mainstream superstar status that no WNBA player has ever achieved, and Sophie is the only one honest enough to acknowledge it publicly.
All she said was talking about, the refs needing to protect. I'm pretty sure. Was it not for her saying the refs need to protect Caitlin Clark? I'm pretty sure that's what she essentially said. The refs need to protect Caitlin Clark. And Caitlin Clark said, finally someone did it. She basically talked about being the refs need to protect the face of the league.
Sophie's rise to prominence proves that fans are desperate for authentic voices in women's basketball. Her podcast with The Volume isn't just entertainment, it's become essential listening for anyone who wants unfiltered truth about what's really happening in the WNBA. While other players calculate their words and worry about offending league officials, Sophie built a media empire by being real. She gets fined for telling the truth about officiating while acknowledging how difficult the job is. Meanwhile, Cathy Engelbert collects a commissioner's salary while overseeing a league where the biggest star gets targeted. Attendance relies entirely on one player, and the officiating is so bad that even the commissioner admits it needs work. The real scandal isn't Sophie Cunningham criticizing referees. It's that the WNBA would rather silence criticism than fix the problems being criticized. Instead of addressing the officiating inconsistencies that every fan, player, and coach complains about, they find the messenger. Instead of protecting their biggest stars from targeted harassment, they penalize the players brave enough to stand up for them. Sophie Cunningham represents everything the WNBA should want: authenticity, loyalty, courage, and the ability to connect with fans across all demographics. She's turned controversy into influence, fines into fortune, and criticism into credibility. Yet Cathy Engelbert's response is to keep writing checks from Sophie's bank account for the crime of having opinions. The message is getting through loud and clear to WNBA fans everywhere. The overwhelming support for Sophie's honesty and the outright disgust with league management. It's an unforced error of epic proportions, and the WNBA leadership has only themselves to blame for empowering the very voice they sought to suppress. What do you think the WNBA should do about Sophie Cunningham? Should they continue to fine her or embrace her as the voice the league desperately needs? Let us know in the comments below.